The mind, it has been a puzzling and dutiful quest that I have continuously been on in search of my own beliefs and understanding myself. It is belief that shapes our existence, and it is belief that allows us to know who we are through our experiences after attaching to it. The two influences in the mental portion are Alan Watts, and an even bigger influence to that has allowed me to be able to go through some limiting, transcend some limiting beliefs is J. Krishnamurti. Um, I am in high appreciation of both of these individuals and continue to see where they can bring me on my internal journey. So enjoy.
The use of things that would lift us out of the egocentric situation could therefore be considered medical as healing for a social disorder. But again, I would say that they, used in that way, should be used as medicine in the sense that they don't become diet. Because in my experience, and of course in this matter everybody speaks for themselves, but say I consider just myself alone, I wouldn't feel very put out if, say, LSD were to vanish from the earth tomorrow. Because I have discovered that this is not the sort of thing you sort of take every so often, like you go to church, or if you do, but it's something that you can take several times in a gradually diminishing quantity, and then you've had it. Beyond that, it's up to you to integrate your vision with everyday life and with all the various kinds of knowledge. Enough is enough. But there are other people who seem to think that the great thing to do is to start out with a little and then keep on going, making it bigger and bigger and bigger, as if they were looking for something that should lie at the end of the line. And then it becomes a diet. Now, that is indeed getting hooked on medicine. And doctors don't like to hook you on medicine, and very rightly, because the ideal of a good doctor is to get rid of you as a patient. He doesn't want chronic patients, poor people always hanging on to him, always rushing for help. He wants to set you back on your own feet. And that is an excellent principle. This is where the doctor really has something to say to the priest, because priests tend, by and large, to want to hook you. In other words, to keep you coming to church, so that you will pay your dues and the church will prosper. So the more people they can get hooked on religion, the merrier. Now, priests in this way ought to learn from the doctors and try and get rid of people by telling them their gospel or whatever it is they have to say and say, now you've had it, go away. Because you see, if you do that, you will create a vacuum, and it will always be filled. Just as when the faster a doctor can get people out of his office, they go around and tell everybody, this man cured me, I didn't have to go back to him. So more people will be coming in. There are always plenty and plenty of people, never come to an end. So in a way, the religious man ought to handle a huge turnover of people, coming through and going away, coming through and going away. Then he's really working. But he should not get them hooked on the medicine. Indeed, there is a famous Latin phrase, crux medicina mundi, the cross, the medicine of the world. But people get hung up, you see, on the cross. And Jesus didn't, you'll remember. According to the Christian mythology, Jesus came alive again afterwards. He didn't get hung up. only for a while. And so in the same way, if Christians really believed in the inner meaning of their doctrine, they wouldn't get hung up on the cross either, except temporarily. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. So also, when it comes to the use of any technique whatsoever, whether it's yoga or LSD or what have you, for spiritual awakening, there applies to it the Buddha's symbol of the raft. The Buddha likened his method, his dharma, or doctrine or method, to a raft. It's also called a yana, or vehicle, hence the Mahayana, the big vehicle, the Hinayana, the little vehicle. And it takes you across the river, of which this shore is birth and death, and the other shore liberation, nirvana. Now you get on that raft and you go over, and when you get to the other shore, you leave the raft behind. Same way they say in Zen Buddhism. Their technique, the use of the koan or meditation problem, is like knocking at a door with a brick. When the door is opened, you don't carry the brick inside.
Krishnamurti, in dialogue with Dr. Alan W. Anderson. J. Krishnamurti was born in South India and educated in England. For the past 40 years, he has been speaking in the United States, Europe, India, Australia, and other parts of the world. From the outset of his life's work, he repudiated all connections with organized religions and ideologies and said that his only concern was to set men absolutely, unconditionally free. He is the author of many books, among them The Awakening of Intelligence, The Urgency of Change, Freedom from the Known, and The Flight of the Eagle. This is one of a series of dialogues between Krishnamurti and Dr. Alan W. Anderson, who is professor of religious studies at San Diego State University, where he teaches Indian and Chinese scriptures and the oracular tradition. Dr. Anderson, a published poet, received his degree from Columbia University and the Union Theological Seminary. He has been honored with a Distinguished Teaching Award from the California State Universities.
Mr. Krishnamurti, I was very taken with a recent statement of yours in which you said that it's the responsibility of each human being to bring about his own transformation, which is not dependent on knowledge or time. And if it's agreeable with you, I thought that it would be a splendid thing if we explored together the general area of transformation itself. And after we've done that, perhaps the other related areas would begin to fall into place, and we could bring about in conversation a relationship among them.
Don't you think, sir, considering what's happening in the world, in India, in Europe, and in America, the general degeneration in literature, in art, and especially in the deep cultural sense, in the sense religion.
Yes.
There is a traditional approach, a mere acceptance of authority, belief, which is not really the religious spirit. Seeing all this, the confusion, the great misery, the sense of infinite sorrow, any observant and most serious people would say that the society cannot possibly be changed except only when the individual, the human being, really transforms himself radically, that is, regenerates himself fundamentally. And the responsibility of that depends on the human being, not on the mass or on the priest or on a church or a temple or mosque or whatever, but on a human being who is aware of this enormous confusion, politically, religiously, economically, in every direction. There is such misery, such unhappiness. And when you see that, it is a very serious thing to ask oneself whether a human being like oneself or another, that whether he can really deeply undergo a radical transformation. And when that question is put to him, and when he sees his responsibility in relation to the whole, then perhaps we can discuss what relationship has knowledge and time in the transformation of man.
I quite follow. We'd need then to lay some groundwork
That's
in order to
yeah.
move into the question itself.
Yes, because most people are not concerned with the world at all. Most people are not concerned seriously with the events, with the chaos, with the mess in the world at present. They're only concerned very superficially. Problem of energy, problem of pollution, and so on, such superficial things. But they're really not deeply concerned with the human mind, the mind that is destroying the world.
Yes, I quite follow. What you've said places in a very cardinal way the radical responsibility on the individual as such, if I've understood you correctly.
Yes.
There are no 5-year plans that we can expect to help us out.
The word individual really is not the correct word, because individual, as you know, sir, means undivided, indivisible in himself. But human beings are totally fragmented. Therefore, they are not individuals. They may have a bank account, a name, a house, but they're not really individuals in the sense a total, complete, harmonious whole, unfragmented. That's really what it means to be an individual human being. Whether, it doesn't matter whether he's a politician or a businessman or just an ordinary person like me in the street. It's our business as a human being to realize the enormous suffering, misery, confusion there is in the world. And it's our responsibility to change all that. Not the politicians, not the businessmen, not the scientists. It's our responsibility.
When we say our responsibility, and we have two uses of the word individual now, there's the general use of it, meaning a quantitative measure.
Yes, yes.
And then this qualitative reference that we've simply needed, it seems to me, to discern as a possibility. I'm reminded again of the statement that you made that I quoted earlier, that it's the responsibility of each human person.
Human being, yes.
Right.
Whether he's in India or in England or in America or wherever he is.
So we can't slip out of this by saying, we have created this, therefore we must change it.
No.
We get back to, well, if the change is going to start at all, it's going to be with each.
Yes, sir.
With each.
With each human being.
Seems to be an indivisible relation between that and what we call the whole, which the individual doesn't sense.
So, as you know, I have been all over the world, except behind the Iron Curtain and Bamboo Curtain. I've been all over. And I've talked, seen dozens and thousands of people. I've been doing this for 50 years and more. Human beings, wherever they live, are more or less the same. They have their problems of sorrow, problems of fear, problems of livelihood, problems of personal relationship, problems of survival, overpopulation, and whether this enormous problem of death, it's a common problem to all of us. There is no Eastern problem and Western problem. The West has its particular civilization, and the East has its own. And human beings are caught in this trap.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I follow that.
And they don't seem to be able to get out of it. They're going on and on and on for millennia. A revolution is generally meant, if you talk to a communist, he wants to overthrow the government. If you talk to a bourgeois, he's frightened. Mm-hmm. If you talk to an intellectual, he has various criticisms about revolution. Now, revolution is either bloody,
yes,
or revolution in the psyche.
Yes.
Outward or inner.
Outward or inner.
The outward is the inner. The inner is the outward. There is not the difference between the outer and the inner. They are totally related to each other.
And this goes back to what you mentioned earlier, that there's no division, even though intellectually you make a distinction here,
that's right,
between the I and the we.
We, that's right.
Yes, of course.
So when we talk about change, we mean not the mere bloody revolution, physical revolution, but rather the revolution in the makeup of the mind
of each person.
Of human beings.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The way he thinks, the way he behaves, the way he conducts himself, the way he operates, he functions, the whole of that. Mm-hmm. Now, whether that psychological revolution, not evolution in the sense, gradualness.
No.
What place has knowledge in that?
What place has knowledge in something that occurs?
In the regeneration of man, which is the revolution, the inward revolution, which will affect the outer.
Yeah, which is not a gradual progress.
No, obviously.
No, right.
The gradual process is endless. So, when we are discussing change, we must be, I think, fairly clear that we mean the change in the psyche, in the very being of human beings. That is, in the very structure and nature of his thought.
A change at the root.
At the root.
At the root itself.
Root. And therefore, when there is that change, he will naturally bring about a change in society. It isn't society first, individual or individual first. It is the human change which will transform the society. They are not two separate things. Human beings have created this society. By their greed, by their anger, by their violence, by their brutality, by their pettiness, they have created this society.
Precisely.
And they think by changing the structure, you're going to change the human being. This has been the communist problem, this has been the eternal problem. That is, change the environment, then you change man. They have tried that in 10 different ways, and they haven't done it, succeeded in changing man. On the contrary, man conquers the environment, the structure. So, if we are clear that the outer is the inner is the outer, that there is not the division, the society and the individual, the collective and the separate human being, but human being is the whole. He is the society, he is the separate human individual, he is the factor which brings about this chaos.
Yes, I'm following that very closely.
He is the world and the world is him.
Yes. Therefore, if he changes,
The whole thing
everything changes. If he doesn't change, nothing changes.
That's right. I think this is very important because we don't realize, I think, this basic factor that we are the world and the world is us. That the world isn't something separate from me and me separate from the world. You're born in a culture, Christian or Hindu or whatever culture you're born in, you are the result of that culture. And that culture has produced this world. The materialistic world of the West, if one can call it, which is spreading all over the world, destroying their own culture, their own traditions. Everything is being swept aside in the wake of the Western culture. And this culture has produced this human being. And the human being has created this culture.
Exactly.
I mean, he has created the painting, the marvelous cathedrals, the marvelous technological things going to the moon and so on, so on. So human beings have produced it. It's the human beings that have created the Russian society in which we live. It's the immoral society in which we live, which human beings have created it.
Oh, yes, there's no way to deny that.
And therefore, the world is you, you are the world. There is no other thing. If we accept that, if we see that, not intellectually, but feel it in your heart, in your mind, in your blood that you are that, then the question, is it possible for a human being to transform himself inwardly and therefore outwardly? Is that human mind has divided the world in order to find its own security, which brings about its own insecurity. When one is aware of that, then one must inwardly as well as outwardly deny this division. As we and they, I and you, the Indian and the European and the communist, you cut at the very root of this division. Therefore, from that arises the question, can the human mind, which has been so conditioned for millennia, can that human mind, which has acquired so much knowledge in so many directions, can that human mind change, bring about a regeneration in itself and be free to reincarnate now? Now.
Yes.
That is
That's the question.
question.
Exactly. Reincarnate
Now.
It would appear from what you've said that one could say that the